I've been listening to Charlie Munger quite a bit recently. Kind of, going back down memory lane, listening to some old lectures, some old videos. The guy was brilliant, had a ton of quotes. And one of my favorite, I'm paraphrasing here, but the idea is that we shouldn't dwell so much on our, we'll call them faults or weaknesses, but rather we should be diving fully into our strengths. And this is one of those things that on the surface probably makes sense right away, but the reality is we don't always do it. We spend so much time stuck on the things we aren't good at or that we're not drawn to that we forget to nurture the things that separate us and make us unique. I like to joke around about Microsoft Excel. Right? Microsoft Excel used to haunt me. I hated it. I hated opening it. I hated the formulas. To me, the seventh layer of hell is someone with a sweater vest on asking me to find trends in an Excel spreadsheet. Right? And so going from school to a job as an analyst, obviously, the circumstances didn't care whether I liked it or not. That was the vehicle through which we had to arrive at a lot of important outcomes. So the deal was figure it out, and I did. And I got better. But the same way a blind person on a park bench would get better at identifying people walking by. They're just operating with less than ideal tools. Right? And that was one of many indicators. It was bro, you are in the wrong spot. Not spot in the building, but spot in life. And as I continued the process of navigating towards my strengths, I saw more and more the value of exactly what Charlie Munger was referring to. The further I stepped outside my zone of genius, the less likely I was to have a positive impact in my own life and the lives of those around me. And again, when you think about this, or even talk through it like you're explaining it to a fifth grader, it makes perfect sense. So an example, you're an athlete, it's your gift, you love it, you thrive on it. Okay, in this example, would you rather spend 90% of your time focusing on the athletics you love and becoming the 1% of the 1%, uncommon amongst uncommon men or women, as Goggins would say? Or would you rather be that incredible athlete who, instead of spending 90% of his time nurturing the gift, felt bad about being terrible at chess, and so practiced chess every day in an effort to go from terrible to mediocre? It's who cares? You suck at chess. You don't need it. Let chess go. Unless you're getting personal enjoyment out of it, which is a different story altogether, but let it go. Focus on where your happiness and strengths intersect. That's where you'll get the most joy. That's where, when the sun comes up in the morning, you jump out of bed, feeling invigorated, ready to take on the day. Right? Too many of us, using the same example, are athletes trying to become mediocre at chess. For what reason? I personally am a creator, a writer, a speaker. It's what I love and it's what I'm good at. So I should be doing creator, writer, speaker things. And so the question I'm going to pose to you is, what is that for you? What are those things in your world? And lastly, because life is not always black and white, there's one more caveat that I think needs to be addressed. If there's something you don't love doing, but it's required to help you do more of the thing that you do love doing, then at least for a period of time, you have to suck it up and find balance, right? So a few examples, easy one for me. My company was a one-man show for a long time. A lot of you know that. I've talked about it. It wasn't just creating, writing, and speaking. Right? It was learning how to use a camera. It was learning how to edit audio, learning how to edit video. It was strategy. It was understanding social media platforms. It was, believe it or not, going through YouTube's data, some of which exports to Excel. But I survived, right? And I still do. And here's what I've learned and where the spirit of Charlie Munger's message has been critical. I surround myself now with people who not only do things I don't like or take care of my weaknesses, but they're amazing at it. Our zones of genius are different. My weaknesses are their strengths. That's Team 101. And that understanding, it frees us all up to do what we're great at as much as possible. Ideally, 100% of the time. In fact, one of my biggest breakthroughs was talking to my now business manager about value add. He's sort of analyzing the situation over here, and he goes, hey, the thing that you can do that no one else can is be sharing your story in front of the camera. We can get an awesome group of people around you to analyze trends on YouTube, to create thumbnails, to answer email, to edit audio and video, to schedule things. In a perfect world, you're doing zero of that. Why? Because your zone of genius is speaking and storytelling. And I got excited thinking about how far that concept could go. It's like, imagine a world where I wake up and only do the things I love doing that fall within my zone of genius. That to me was groundbreaking. It's like Charlie's comment isn't just about going, from the minefield of Excel to creating my own business. No, it takes it further. It's shedding things until all that's left is the stuff that makes a difference. That's how you create greatness. And I'd advocate, that's the mental shift we should all be making. Stop feeling like, we owe it to someone or something to go from a 0 to a 2 in a certain category, when we can change our lives and the world by going from an 8 to 10 in the things that mean the most to us. You have that ability, right? It's a cutting away process, understanding what moves the needle and going all in there. So if you're looking around and realizing, hey, I'm fighting every day to go from bad to proficient, particularly in an area I don't care about, then odds are you're in the wrong arena. And I think the best advice is to seek out the right one. To find a place where that exhausted energy lights you up. It'll be life-changing, experiencing the power that a move in that direction can make. What if the so-called detours in our lives weren't detours at all? What if they were the way? And all that time spent worrying, analyzing, critiquing was nothing more than an inability to realize the perfection of the moment. The greatness that, completely oblivious to us, we've stumbled upon. Sometimes we can fall into the trap of looking at life in a way that I believe is too linear. And I certainly think we benefit from simplicity for a variety of reasons. Clarity, the ability to make something repeatable, the gift of focus. But here's the thing, truth is so rarely black and white. And that begs the question, well, what do we make of all that nuance and detail, all that other stuff? The surprises, twists, turns, mistakes, sudden goodbyes, unexpected hellos, the cutting away and the taking on. Because life is messy, unpredictable. And our greatest lessons seem to come from places we least expect them to. Our most memorable moments are often somehow dropped into our laps. It's the whole John Lennon notion that life is what happens while you're busy making other plans, right? And it's interesting to me that I've spent a decade pointing at this metaphorical mountaintop, pouring myself into a methodical plan, just to see again and again that The value continuously comes from the places I didn't anticipate. Where if I kept my eyes closed or even blinked for a second, I might have missed it. Seems like the important things often dress themselves up as mistakes, problems, setbacks, and detours. So why bring all this up? Well, in case you're like me, and you have that tendency from time to time to beat yourself up for the times you fell short, let yourself down, the times you swung and missed. For anyone who thinks a deviation from the original path is in some way a failure, my goal is to remind you that these things, every single one of them, they all come together to make you, you. And the more days I collect, the more I realize they are not only part of the chapter, but integral to the storyline. They're the character development. See, somewhere, at some point along the way, you'll have situations that change, things that come and go, relationships that fall apart. Forever things that ended up being rather temporary. And that animal brain will tell you that, this was somehow a total loss, that your days were wasted, your time was stolen. It won't highlight for you how much you actually learned, or that point in time gave life to the next thing, which became the next, which opened the door to the next, that it was all part of this critical evolution. The thoughts you think, wisdom you now hold, none of that is ever realized without you having taken the path you took. And so I ask, was that a detour? Or was that you being exactly where you needed to be? Then there will be ideas. The ones you thought you had ironed out, nailed, hit out of the park, the plans that would change the narrative, rewrite the story. But ultimately, time just wouldn't allow them to live up to that potential. And they'll fade away and leave you no choice but to pick yourself up and move on. And your pride, your emotions will absorb all that and tell you, hey, it was all for naught. Another failure, a giant L. They won't show you how learning to brush yourself off and start again is a muscle, a skill, and that being as all people fall, the ones who never learn to get back up are at a tremendous disadvantage in life. They won't explain that you're more courageous now than you've ever been up to this point in time, that depersonalizing our miscalculations and carrying on, well, it won't just help you succeed, it will be the reason you do, the X factor, the wind beneath your outstretched wings. And so I ask, were those miscalculations detours? Or were they the wisdom that you needed more than anything else? And then, of course, there will be the times you just don't know. Perhaps these are the hardest, stuck, unsure. And it's bad enough that you have no idea. But then you look around and it always seems like everyone else has it all figured out. Everyone else has it down. At least that's the message, our brains like to create. You're alone in this. This is all you. It doesn't tell you that in reality, no one knows exactly where they're going or what they're doing. And the ones who think they do are very often redirected, and for good reason, as is the entire point of this message. Right? It doesn't tell you that you don't find yourself until you get lost. That life is not some predetermined checklist or series of qualifications, it's an adventure where some corners are turned only for you to realize that the contents just around the bend aren't what you wanted. And some bridges are crossed only for you to see that maybe you were wrong about what you thought was important. And that, contrary to how you might originally feel, is a beautiful thing. The times you're unsure remind you to keep your eyes open, to enjoy what's around you, capture the value, explore the vastness of a world that will eventually offer up all the pieces required to build what you need. And so I ask, was being unsure a detour? Or the necessary starting point to live a life true to yourself? Perhaps we've been looking at this whole thing the wrong way, a little too black and white. What if what we need to do is, while in pursuit of whatever it is we're pursuing, give ourselves a little more love, a little more understanding, because one cannot be their own greatest critic if they forget to also be their own biggest fan. The two are inextricably linked, making it not okay to be so caught up in the former that one forgets the latter. Life is messy. So forgive yourself when your plans, from time to time, mimic the pulse of the very world we are trying so desperately to navigate. Be there for yourself. Because every step is important, every moment matters. And again, I ask, what if the so-called detours in our lives weren't detours at all? What if they were the way? And all the time spent worrying, analyzing, critiquing, what if they were nothing more than an inability to realize the perfection of the moment? The greatness that we've stumbled upon. Thoreau said that most men lead lives of quiet desperation and go to the grave with the song still in them. Probably an astute observation, as most death is potential put to rest. Most stories were stories about what could have been. Perhaps simply because it's easier on the ego to talk about what life could have looked like if you cared enough to shape it than to have actually put skin in the game and fallen short. But there lies the misconception. To step into life's chaos with the hopes of taming it is why we're here. And yeah, obviously it hurts to fail. It hurts to be vulnerable, to put yourself out there, especially when it seems as though all eyes are on you. But that hurt is a fraction of the hurt Thoreau describes. Falling hurts, but it hurts less than wishing you had the courage to fall. Ridicule, it hurts. But it hurts less than being the one on the sidelines, pointing the finger and simultaneously longing for the courage to take action in their own life. What keeps us from going? What keeps us from building? We know life is short. We know regret is the ultimate pain. We know how much opportunity is out there, so why? Why would we not go? Why would we designate dreaming to sleep? In his famous Man in the Arena speech, Teddy Roosevelt said this: "It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs and comes up short again and again, because there is no effort without error or shortcoming, but who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at worst, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who knew neither victory nor defeat." No one who is content in their own life will go out of their way to bring you down. There was never a critic deeply immersed in their own journey who took the time to mock or scoff at the man in the arena. I think our fear is pointed in the wrong direction. It shouldn't be concentrated on or focused on the opinions of those who have not yet themselves walked through those doors. No, the fear should be letting life go by without ourselves walking through. The fear should be contributing to Thoreau's statistic of quiet desperation, the one most men face. But you are not most men or most women, not because you were given some special power or status, but because you decided. You can choose not to be like most people. Basic math, taking into account the number of people in the stands versus the number of people on the stage or court or in the arena, well, it tells a tale of courage. Anyone can sit in the stands. Anyone can. Anyone can, from the nosebleeds, decide whether to clap or point or boo or cheer. But who suits up and enters the game? Who looks at the finitude of life and says, "This is my reason to start building, to put it all on the line. Because if I fail, it will mean I was one of the few who looked around and said, this isn't bigger than I am. This world is not predefined. It's being built in real time by those willing to walk through the doors and step into the arena. Not the critics, but the doers." And look, everyone has a thing, right? I don't know what that thing is for you, but you do. You probably think about it all the time, dream about it every day. You probably know it's where your heart is pulling you. Do not let your life become a statistic. Don't you dare go to that graveyard having been someone who held on tighter to excuses than to what mattered most in your life. So go. Step into the arena, and if they point, let them point. If they criticize, let them criticize. Your concern isn't with those wishing they had the courage to step through those doors themselves. It's not about them, it's about you. It's about understanding the beauty and the opportunity and the freedom contained in life. for those who find the courage to reach out and take it. At night, the sky becomes visible. The darkness, the muting out of everything else allows the stars to finally shine through, to make their presence known. And during the day, conversely, one cannot see those stars, but the world around him on the ground becomes illuminated. It's a push and pull that seems to work perfectly. And I think there's something poetic about the partnership existing between the big picture goal and the small steps required to bring it to life. As one of my favorite sayings goes, keeping your head in the clouds and your feet on the ground. Because here's what's interesting. If one were to only look up at the goal, she'd be consistently reminding herself of the ideal without taking the necessary steps to get there. And if one were to only look down at her feet, well, her steps would eventually become aimless. And it's that duality, right? The need to both reassure yourself you can see the stars, as well as use the world around you to pull yourself closer to them, that changes things. Right? It's that beautiful dance that has to be maintained. And this is a balancing act that has certainly been challenging. Right? Sometimes the pendulum swings way too far one way, sometimes way too far the other. But in a perfect world, you want it gravitating towards the center. I remember just starting the YouTube channel almost a decade ago, having, big multi-million subscriber goals, but completely lacking the systems and everyday practices in place that would walk me towards that finish line. Right? I mean, sure, something's better than nothing. I was working and learning, but the actions simply didn't align with the objective. I had to correct them. And then I've been on the other end as well. Right? I'd be doing things every day without knowing why. All steps, no goal. That sort of thing occurs when routine takes on a life of its own. You start doing things because, it's what I do. It's what I've always done. And, this is when one has to look in the mirror and ask the difficult questions. And look, anytime I can squeeze the complexities down into the simple, I try and do that. So with that in mind, my questioning goes like this. What do you want? Know the answer? Okay, good. Next question. Is what you're doing taking you closer every day to what you want? Asking that question in a serious way takes a spotlight to one's world. Using my previous metaphor, it shuts the lights off so the North Star becomes visible. And then, turns them back on to ask yourself if you're using your resources to move there. And I've become pretty good at asking myself this question consistently, and still I find things that don't belong. That sort of, they hide in plain view. I have faith that I'll end up exactly where I need to be. But that faith is rooted in my commitment to continually assess, to scrutinize, and adjust. There's very little hope and a substantial amount of trust in my ability to continue forward. There's an idea referred to as the Stockdale paradox, which states, and this is the first definition I grabbed from Google here, You must never confuse faith that you'll prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be. That's where the tough love thing comes in. Be your biggest fan because no one will believe in you unless you do. It all starts with your trust in yourself to navigate the process and arrive where you must arrive. But it also requires you are your biggest critic. It means the reason you trust yourself to get there is because you know you won't just sit back and say, I'll win because I believe I'll win. No, you'll win because you will, while having your head in the clouds, be brutally pragmatic with the steps you're taking on the ground. You'll win because you're committed to learning and adjusting. One of my favorite epiphanies when I started doing this full time was the realization, at a very small scale at first, that, someone can't fail unless they quit. You can't lose unless you stop. Impossible, someone might think, right? Well, no, because when you miss the mark or you fall short, you take a second to understand why, and then you come back to the problem or challenge again, right? This means life is a game of tenacity, of persistence, of commitment. The one who keeps adjusting and coming back is bound to connect the dots eventually, which makes failure the simple decision that, this isn't worth it for me. I don't want to continue adjusting and re-engaging with this. And look, hey, depending on the situation, that may be the move, right? There have been things in my life where after sufficient trial and error, sufficient data, I've said, this doesn't align with who I am or what I want. I'm going to walk away and pivot to something that does, right? But the key is knowing that it is a decision. To not reach a particular goal is a choice to no longer attack it relentlessly. And so when you feel lost or defeated or even frustrated with the process, try that line of questioning. What do I want? And is what I'm doing today bringing me there? This allows you to start taking a sledgehammer to the things that don't belong, refining the process. And sometimes walking away from the things that are no longer in the scope of who you want to be and where you're going. But the power is in knowing, it's in understanding that your footsteps, the little actions of your day-to-day, they are incredibly powerful. But most of all, when you are methodical with them, when they're pointed in the right direction. So pick your stars carefully and own those steps that take you towards them. Failure is not a sickness you catch. It doesn't fall on your head like a piano in those old cartoons. It's a choice. Meaning, in positive terms, as long as you are committed to learn, reapproach, and repeat, you will find yourself atop the mountain. As long as you're willing to evolve, you will ultimately arrive.